Hello, everyone. I'm Kalen North, and today we're going to be doing a slightly different thing. I've got with me special guest Fyandor,
Hi, everybody.
and Fyandor has a guide that he put out onto Reddit about a year ago, year and a half ago. It's been out there for a
Yeah,
while.
forever ago.
Yeah, it feels like a long time, but it's a really good framework in my opinion. And he was kind enough to agree to come on here and talk about it a little bit with me, and maybe look at some example games.
Yeah, excited to show it off in audio visual format as well as the text base that it originally came in.
Yeah. And we'll have a link to the original guide in the description. So if you want to go and look at it, read along as we're going through things, feel free. That'll be right at the top of the description. So, framework. There's four big things that I think are worth defining as far as how your framework works. So, can you talk us through these problems, threats, blockers, and scaling?
Yeah, so what happened in making this guide was I had to kind of come up with a system and a vocabulary for concepts that I was kind of applying without having particular words for them. And so the words that I came up with were problems, threats, and blockers, which each refer to the board state of a specific land because of the overall game state of like the Ravage cards. That sounds really weird. So let me try and do that with the specifics of the three in a slightly more normal human sounding way. A problem I defined in here, I said it was any of the lands in the Ravage or Build slots. And the reason that I say that is when you start your turn, you can look and you can see what lands have just explored and are therefore now about to build, and what lands have just built and are therefore now about to ravage. On any given turn, there are going to be two of these per, two in the ravage, two in the build. Uh, you'll have three if there's a coast card. You get four in the stage threes. But this is kind of the just the steady drumbeat of what the invaders are doing every single turn. Um, if this didn't exist, there wouldn't be a game because there wouldn't be any opposition. So this is the natural flow of everything. And the idea with threats and blockers is that they are, in some sense, heightened versions of problems or different incarnations of problems that much more markedly affect whether you win or lose. Over the course of a game, you're going to have, I don't know, like 20, 30 different problems to deal with. Over the course of a game, you're going to have far fewer threats and far fewer blockers. And those are the things that are really going to determine whether you win or lose. You're trying to just tread water with the problems until you get to threats and blockers. So I defined a threat. Actually, let me do blocker first because I think it's easier.
Sure.
Um, I defined a blocker as an invader piece that is preventing you from winning the game. Most often, that is the last city on the board, right? If you're in Terror 3 and there's one city on the board, if you can just kill that city, boom, immediately you win. The game is over. I come from a chess background. Like, that is, you've checkmated the opponent, right? You ever have the opportunity to go for a checkmate or to just make a play that instantly ends the game in a victory for you, you should do that because then you win. And usually we're trying to win. A threat is kind of the inverse of that. It's the opponent's having a big knockout move that is going to hurt you really badly or do something badly to you. And specifically how I defined it is I said it's a land or a condition by which the invaders will make major progress toward defeating the spirits. And the reason I had to say it that way is that threats have to do with the adversary's true loss condition, which is not necessarily the one that is printed on the card, though sometimes it is. Um, there are adversaries, for example, that don't have a printed loss condition, but they have a loss condition in the sense that threat is trying to express.
Just to
Uh,
clarify, I think it sounds to me like you're saying, like with Brandenburg Prussia, the running out of the invader deck is a bigger threat, or Sweden with no printed loss condition, but potentially being overrun with blight. Is that sort of what you're getting at there?
yep, that 100% what I'm getting at.
Okay.
That those adversaries don't technically have loss conditions, but they have a way that they beat you, right?
Yeah.
Like I would argue that people probably fairly rarely die to Prussia by running out of blight, as opposed to realizing, oh my god, the game is over already. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I will admit
Uh,
I have lost both ways to Prussia, but that is
well,
beside the
I mean,
point.
yeah. Well, and sometimes what happens is that you're going, oh shoot, we're really low on time. We need to go for stuff, and then you go for things and it doesn't work, and then the blight cascades everywhere, and you die. Like
Yeah, exactly.
Spirit Island gives you no shortage of ways to die, but I think overall, I think people would agree that Prussia is trying to beat you by having you run out of time where you can't win fast enough. And Sweden is trying to beat you by you just having to pull all of the blight off of the card, and then all the blight off of the backside of the card, and then all of the blight out of the box insert, and then all of the blight out of the expansion that you bought, and you're just like piling and piling and piling it on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's how you're gonna die. Um, so a threat is a thing that you need to kind of notice when you're looking at the board and say to yourself, oh, this is particularly bad. If I don't do something about this one, I could I could either lose instantly or I could be, set back dramatically. And a couple examples there are that, for example, you can have an England land that is your biggest threat in the game, even though it's not in the build or ravage steps. Because if you have an England land with 6 buildings and a stage 2 card coming up that's going to have a stage 2 escalation, you're going to have to build in that land. And as soon as you build, it will have 7 buildings, and then you lose. So that is the threat, that is the thing that is going to cause the invaders to win, and therefore the thing that you need to be paying the most attention to. And then scaling is something that was not, I think, explicitly defined in the guide. It was kind of somewhat assumed, um, that people had at least a basic idea of what it meant. And there's a lot of interesting specifics, and I may well write another guide about it coming up. But the basic idea of scaling is that it's postponing. No, that's not a way I want to say it. Scaling is building your spirit's strength in the future, usually by making the trade-off of not acting as powerfully as you could right in this moment. You're trying to kind of jump yourself up to a higher level of power by sacrificing some current power.
So just to maybe dig into that a little bit, I think the most obvious example is like if I'm River, I want to place 2 presents instead of reclaiming as often as I possibly can because that's going to make me much scarier when I'm on 5 card plays than when I'm on 3 card plays.
Yep.
And if I start reclaiming too early, like if I play Flash Floods turn 1 and I want to play Flash Floods turn 2 and I don't have my Reclaim 1 slot, then I'm wasting a bunch of resources reclaiming when I could be placing presents and getting up to full level Massive Flooding or something like that.
Yeah, the theoretical no scale build on any spirit is that you place presence on the first turn and then you just reclaim every turn after that.
So approximately lightning, but not quite.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but the very obvious problem with that, and I think this is a trap that a lot of new players fall into because they see problems showing up and they don't yet have the game knowledge to understand sort of, the the meme with the dog in the room that's on fire,
Yeah, yeah. This is fine.
right? So the thing that Spirit Island teaches you is that you have to be that dog a little bit. Like the invaders are coming for the island and they're going to keep coming, and you have to be able to look at all of the actions that they're taking and watch your island home being partially destroyed and go, no, this is fine. I'm gonna build up, I'm gonna scale up, I'm gonna be able to take care of this. Right now it's on fire, and that's okay, and I accept that. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and the I don't know, the term for that is scaling. The idea of letting this drumbeat of problems happen while there's still problems so that you can scale up, so that you can parry threats and take out blockers when the time actually comes.
All right. Um, I think then we've got these four terms. So if I can step forward, we have how to do the turn evaluation process then.
Yeah. So the whole point of defining this, as I said, was just what I was really trying to dig out was when I look at the board and my hands and my spirit board and the invader cards, when I look at like all of this holistically together, that's a lot of stuff that's happening all at the same time, right? And how do you get an understanding of what I need to pay attention to and how I even start going about making decisions with this? And so using these terms was a way to get at the process that I use every single turn that I'm playing a game, of just looking and trying to figure out what's going on, what do I need to do. Um, and so we've written this. Savvy viewers will notice that this is now going to be identify blockers, threats, and problems, and that's defined, or that is listed in a different order than they were originally defined in. The reason for that is that this is the order that you actually want to be thinking about these three types of lands in. Um, I think we already said that blockers are, for example, that last city that's on the board. And if you can go for them, that's checkmate. You win instantly. So the first thing that you should do on every one of your turns is ask yourself, can I win this turn? Or if you're in a group, can we win this turn? Right? There's no, like, there isn't a better move you can make than winning. Um, and so you want to try to identify if that opportunity is there. And if the opportunity is there, there's no, like, you don't need to scale anymore. You need to act powerfully right now, do the thing, take out the blockers, win the game, boom, you're done. Oftentimes, that can't happen. By definition in Spirit Island, there's only one turn on which you actually win. So most of the rest of the turns of the game, you don't win. And usually that's not like a failing of players. That's usually, it is turn 2. I can't kill all these things yet, you know. So you do the evaluation. You say, are there any blockers? If there aren't any blockers, you then look around and you say, okay, we're going to have to keep playing this game. And if we're going to have to keep playing, we need to try and stop the adversaries from doing their big power move, right? We need to look around and say, does Habsburg have a loss condition ravage coming in right now? Because if I let too many normal ravages through with Habsburg, um, I turn off their escalation. I've actually done better for myself almost, right? But if I let too many loss condition blights come through, well, then I die because I lose to the adversary loss condition. Um, do I have a Sweden land that is ravaging for 6 or more damage and is already blighted, and so it's going to add 3 blight from this one land, right? That's a threat. That's something that I need to address right now and take care of. And then the last one, the problems, is really just if you've evaluated the other two and you've figured out what is there or what isn't there, you know whether you have to like primarily care about these problems or not. On certain turns, when there aren't any blockers and there aren't any threats, you just kind of sit there and you go, ho hum, all right, there are a couple problems here. So I just I need to take some kind of action that does something about this. But it's not worth bending my turn out of shape in order to do it. I just need to, if sands are ravaging and you have a defend card and you can play it, don't play it in the jungle. The jungle isn't ravaging. Play it in the sands, right? That kind of basic thing. So once you've evaluated that board state, you're not doing it sort of just for fun, but you're doing it in order to really truly develop your plan for how to address all of the things that you just identified in that first step. And this was the part of the guide that I found hardest to write, this sort of develop plan and then choose the growths and cards for the plan, because it felt like this kind of set of branching possibilities.
Well,
But
I mean, at this point, this is basically just playing the game to some extent. Like, this is why we like, or at least why some of us like the game, is the complexity of the branching paths that come in. Is how do you develop a
yeah,
plan to deal with some set of arbitrary conditions? With, I think Ted has made some comment about Spirit Island's a game where you need a chainsaw, but all you have is a katana and 10 throwing knives, and you need to figure out how to make those work like a chainsaw.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You've got all of these. There are a bunch of things contesting for your attention, and you have tools that all sort of work, but aren't necessarily perfect fits for everything. And so there are often a lot of questions of, you know, which of these tools is more effective here versus which one is going to be more effective later. And that plays into when am I going to need to reclaim, and do I even have enough energy to play all the tools? And you just like this is the part where, in my thinking, you start your turn looking up at the island board, right? Where are the invaders and what are they going to do? And once you've figured out this is my priority, these are the other things that are there, that's sort of the full list and rank ordered. Now I'm going to look down at my own spirit board and my own cards that I have in my hand and in the discard, and you know dream about the cards that could come in the power deck, and decide how I'm going to manipulate all of those tools, that katana and the 10 throwing knives that I have, into the plan that most effectively addresses stuff. Um, so I broke this down into four different possibilities, which are sort of kind of three possibilities, but we'll just I'm gonna kind of say um, all of them. So the first one is, let's imagine that there's a blocker that we have one last city on the board. We have a fast speed major power that can take it out. Right. Our game plan should be this sort of very easy connect the dots, where you do the thing where you kind of look down at the major power and go, this destroys cities. And you look up at the one city, you look down, you look up, you look down, right?
Yeah.
This is obviously going to be our plan.
This is when I stop playing cards, when I realize my partner has the major power, and I say, okay, I think you can just win it for us this turn.
Yeah, exactly. This often happens in like the last turn of a multiplayer game where a couple of other people have already killed all their cities, and then they're looking over at that one other board that is going, all right, yeah, there's the last city. I got this power. Boom, we're good. So the easiest answer of this is that um, you like you have the tool that you need, and there's some growth option that you need to do in order to execute that. And I mean, literally, sometimes you don't even need to do a growth option, right? Sometimes you're holding the card in your hand and you see the thing that you need to connect. In that case, you just play the card.
Yeah. Yeah.
But other times, like, what if the card is in your discard, right? But if you reclaim, you'll have enough energy.
Yeah.
This is
Or
pop quiz for you, right?
or you need to do like your energy spike in order to pay for the major that's in your hand or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm playing shifting memory. I have the card that will finish it, but oh no, I don't have enough energy to pay for it. You know,
Yeah.
looks pointedly at the +9 energy growth
Exactly.
shifting memory has. Right. So if you need the card and you need to do a certain thing to make that happen, do the thing, right? If you like need to do it because there's a threat on the board, but because it's a threat, it's not going to, like, you're not going to win the game just by doing it. You want to sort of, again, I used this earlier, but you want to minimize the amount that you're having to bend your turn around in order to do it, right? So if the major power is in your hand and you already have enough energy to play it, you probably don't need to do your energy spike because you already have the energy, right?
Yeah.
So instead, you should be looking at, all right, I can play this card. I don't need to energy spike for it. So how can I grow in the most effective way here?
Yeah, and that's going to be, I assume, where you take into consideration reducing the number of blockers or looking at the problems that are out there. So I've parried the threat with my major, but I still need to plan the rest of my turn around being as efficient as possible with my remaining resources.
Right. Although I'm going to say that it shouldn't be, if we have a threat on the board and we're talking about a threat, we should be going down to problems, but we probably shouldn't be then secondarily worrying about blockers. Right?
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if there's a blocker, that's our first priority.
Yeah.
And if there are essentially so many blockers that there's no path to victory, then we don't care about them. Right?
Yeah.
They're not in a state that we can sort of affect and manipulate right now.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so if you're set up, and then I talked about the weird third case here, which is that there is no blocker. So the second case is that you have a blocker or a threat, and you're just set up and ready to use it already. The card's in your hand, you have the energy and whatever. The third case is like the weird, you're totally in control version of that, where there actually isn't a blocker or a threat. There's just kind of some problems because the game is happening, but you're fine right now. Everything is legitimately fine. And you, once again, in that case, all you're worrying about is you're saying, okay, there's nothing pressing for me to do on this turn, so I need to get bigger. I need to scale up because something pressing is going to come down the pike, right? We're going to have blockers and threats that will show up. They're just not here on this turn. So this is my turn where I can just kind of be comfy, build myself up, and get myself set up for the future.
This is how I always feel for the first 3 turns of England before I lose.
Right, yeah. England is really good about that. You get lulled into this sense of like, well, there's not that many buildings or anything anywhere.
All of a sudden, I'm down a disease token, and there's 5 buildings in a land that only had 2, and it's like, how did that happen?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And you're going. We can have 2 build card slots, and we have the escalation, and all of a sudden, everything is a problem. But this is actually, I mean, you raise a really good point with bringing up England. That one of the things England, I think, is supposed to teach you as an adversary is this is what it means to scale, right?
Yeah.
England is an adversary that punishes you incredibly hard for not knowing how to scale and not understanding that you need to scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because yeah, because they're gonna like throw they're I've compared them to, you know, those like asphalt rolling machines,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The really heavy like cylinder ones. They're not fast. Like you can if you were being chased by one of them, like you can just get away from it, right? They're they're not
It's
dangerous because they're fast, but they're dangerous because if you don't do something about it, that thing's real heavy and it's gonna run you over.
yeah,
And that's what England feels like.
yeah,
And so to I don't know, make that the metaphor, right? Like you need to scale yourself up so that you are like the Thing from Fantastic Four, where you're strong enough to resist the big asphalt roller. Um, so and then I talked about the fourth case, right? So we've addressed um, you need the card and you uh, you need the card and you need to do something specific to make sure you can use it. We've talked about you need the card and you can use it. You're just set up. You're good. We've talked about you don't need any particular card. You're pretty comfy and everything that exists is problems and you're just going to scale. And then the last one is there's a blocker, or, and I think this particularly happens, there's a threat, but you don't actually have something that will fix it, that will deal with it. And in that case, if you're playing solo or if you're playing multiplayer, it's really important to kind of like grab the alarm bell and ring it and go, okay, like this thing right here, this is this is the crux point of the game, right? I need to do something about this because if I do, we win, and if I don't, we lose. It's not always so clean that it's literally one or the other, um,
yeah. But like
but
the last city when
it all.
you're about to run out of towns against France or something at terror level 3, if you
Mhm.
hit the build phase, you could have this situation where you're looking at, if I can get a fast major that takes out that last city, then I don't have to worry about the build phase where they're going to build 7 towns and run us out of the town pool.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That you can have that kind of situation showing up, and so you're really. I mean, this is one of the reasons that you're looking for blockers all the time, because in a scenario like that, you know, your two choices theoretically are, you know, gun for it and like try to win the game right now, or try to do your best to stop this flood of towns. And if there's one thing that France is really good at, especially in like stage 3 invader cards, it's throwing a lot of towns at you.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
the, you know, this kind of might be the one instance where you have the opportunity to go for the win. If you focus on containing the damage, there's going to be too much damage everywhere. It's going to overwhelm you, like you're going to lose.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
and that to me is usually a, I didn't scale enough early on to do the damage control, and so but I did scale enough to get rid of the last blocker, perhaps. Whether that scaling was getting a little extra fear to make sure I got to terror level 3, or scaling up enough to say, okay, I do have a fast major that can take out a city.
Yeah. It. I think it. I mean,
I mean, maybe
oddly,
that's getting a
it
little away
leads
from your
to.
point, but
Well, no, but I mean, it leads to actually like really interesting scaling. One of the cool things I think about Spirit Island is the way that the difficulty, there are difficulty levers in terms of the adversaries that you have, but you also, like, players kind of create their own difficulty. The reason that games so often end in this kind of like balanced knife edge way, um, you know, if you're balanced knife edge winning like a level 3 adversary, right? And you sort of recognize that sense of, oh, this often happens to me, that on a level 3 adversary I'll have this one sort of moment where I can strike and I can, you know, chop off the invaders' heads right here. I can take out that blocker and win. And if I don't do that, the threats are going to overwhelm me. Um, I think this is exactly what you said, that it's about maybe a question that you might want to ask yourself if you're interested in trying to push to higher adversary difficulties is, did I scale efficiently? But a thing that is cool about the game is that whatever scaling you end up doing is going to be approximately right for the games that you are able to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
It and it that leads to this, the games often become dramatic because whatever decisions you made in the past about how you scaled have led you to this moment where you now have to go for that like really cool, you know, drive through the tiny little, the the doors are closing and you're in the spaceship and you have to floor the spaceship and do the like sideways turn to slide through the doors right before they close on you for good.
Yeah. 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 That
Uh,
makes a lot of
um,
sense. Or at least I
I
think I get what you're saying. But
Yeah. I just realized that was an incredibly long digression for anyone who's not reading along, and it's like, so what's the fourth case that you were talking
right.
about? But the idea of that fourth case is that you have the blocker or the threat, and you don't have the stuff that can handle it. And in that instance, that's the instance where you do completely turn your game around, right? You do whatever it takes to give yourself a shot at winning or stopping the immediate loss right now. Which pretty this almost always means that you just kind of draw cards and Hail Mary and hope, and you're like, all right, I need something that deals with this right now. Show me the money, and you deal out four things, and you see if any of them help. Um, sometimes that works, and if it works, you pick the thing that helps, and if it doesn't work, then that's too bad. And I guess, you know, play another game and try to focus on your fundamentals and your scaling, um, so that you're not in quite that desperate of a position. Um, and then I think the last part of figuring out your turn, uh, to me is sort of the easiest because it's the low pressure stuff that comes after that, right? Like we were just talking about doing this thing or not doing this thing because it's winning or losing the game right now. And when you think about that and then you say, okay, so we've figured out this plan, we've like done all this thing. Um, and also, this explorer in town over there are going to ravage, and it will do one blight. You know, there's kind of a there's a
It's
difference.
a little bit of an anticlimax after the six building land against England or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is why, you know, oftentimes when you reach the end of that game and there's the one city left, and someone says, "All right, cool, I've got this major power. It'll take out the city. Boom, we're done." Right? Like you don't actually plan out the rest of your turn in that
Yeah.
instance
Yeah.
because what, you know, like what are you doing?
I mean,
But
sometimes that's when
most
the
of
penultimate turn was really the big one, where you did everything to get yourself down to one blocker, so that
right.
your buddy over there could just play that last, insatiable hunger of the swarm or talons of lightning or whatever power.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You sort of that that's the situation that happens where effectively you won the game last turn, but technically, you know, the player needs to play this card on this following turn.
Yeah.
So we do that. But yeah, on most of the turns of the game though, because it's not like literally game deciding what is happening on this turn, on most of those turns, you're going to need to, you know, appropriately assess all of these priorities that exist, figure out what the plan is for the priority, and then just like fill in the rest of the stuff around it, right? This is where, you know, what I said, the like the city and the town are ravaging and you have a defend card and it's in the sands and you should play the defend card on the sand and not the jungle, right?
Yep.
That's just sort of, I mean, that's a
That's
I
one of
think
the first
everybody.
lessons you learn. Like you figure that
I
out
think
pretty early
everybody
on.
probably is familiar with that concept, but just apply that in general, right? Like try to the other stuff that you have that's available. You just kind of look around and you're like, is there something useful that I can do with this? Um, and often, I think this is why innates are actually really helpful as guideposts for players, because we've been acting as if the thing that's going to address the blocker or the threat is a power and usually a major power. But it isn't always, right?
Yeah,
If you're, in fact, if you're playing Sharp Fangs, like a bottom track oriented Sharp Fangs, probably the thing that you're using to, attack the biggest priority, uh, is your left innate, is ranging hunt,
absolutely, absolutely.
right? And so if that's the case, then you probably already are using a lot of your resources because you've had to figure out, well, I'm going to need to play, these three cards in order to uh, turn on my raging hunt innate power. And so in a situation like that, what we're really talking about with maximizing the resources isn't it's not so much do we add other cards to this, it's we kind of like we look at the text on the power and we say, huh, this one's called Teeth Gleam from the Darkness.
What do I get to do
What
with that now? I know it helps ranging hunt, but what does the actual text say? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm really playing this because it turns on ranging hunt. That's the primary thing. But given that I've committed to playing it, you know, this seems like a useful card that is that the
That's the one fear out of beast,
it's the like one fear at the beat. Yeah.
or three fear if you've already got a beast in the land. But I don't know that I've ever actually used that mode. I probably should more often, but I feel like I get plenty of fear with fangs.
Yeah. I don't play Fangs all that much, so but yeah, exactly. The idea is this card has hit the the floor, like we're using it. We might as well do something sensible with it. So what is kind of the best thing that I can do um, with its secondary purpose after it's already fulfilled its primary purpose?
Yeah. And for that one in specific, I think of things like, well, I get to the next terror level, or I push for a larger ranging hunt next turn. And so there are
Yeah.
really, really relevant use cases that are still tied into your framework and your plan of using ranging hunt to clear out the big land, but it's still secondary what's happening there because it's not the thing that's dealing with the immediate blocker or threat. It's there to help set up for next turns blockers and threats.
And you raise a good point there as well, which is that there's a little bit more fluidity within the game than these kind of rigid constraints. Because, for example, in a situation like that where we have, imagine we have a blocker, we have a like a final city that remains on the board, and we're playing Sharp Fangs, and we can turn on Raging Hunt, but we're terror level 2,
Yeah.
right? So that city, there's this sort of thing where it's like the city is a blocker, but the other blocker theoretically is that we don't have enough fear to get there. And so we may well need to play Teeth Gleam both in order to turn on Raging Hunt to deal with the physical peace blocker and to gain some fear to pop us over that threshold into Terror 3 so that destroying the blocker actually works and wins us the game. Teeth Gleam it's a slow power, right?
Yeah, it's slow. So
Yeah.
so that actually sort of leads me to a slightly related question, if I can digress this a bit more, is how do you deal with things like a town, if I have a slow power that takes out the last city, but they're going to build a city in the build phase. How do you evaluate that to be built city as a blocker, or do you just
Yes.
okay? So you have to kind of plan ahead a little bit when you're looking at the turn and say not all of the blockers are on the board yet, and maybe not all the threats are on the board yet.
Yeah. And the way that I try to sort of think about that is that because I know, you know, it's hard to like think ahead in this game. But I feel like there are two versions of thinking ahead and one is much easier. The easy one is applying the known information and expecting the information to happen, right? So if we have one city on the board, but there's a card in the build slot and there's a land where that will build another city, it like it shouldn't surprise you when the second city shows up, right?
Yeah.
You saw what the invader cards were and you saw what the board state was. Like this is you can you can look at this and anticipate that happening. And I think that that's the version of quote unquote looking ahead that is really just understanding what this turn is going to bring, that is much easier than the harder version, which is sort of anticipating, somewhere hidden in that invader deck is this card, and eventually when it comes up, it's going to create this situation on the board, right? That's a whole separate thing that comes into more like long-term optimization and is exactly what I was trying to avoid talking about in this guide,
Okay.
because my belief is that you can get up to max level adversaries without really ever having to deal with that.
Sure.
It
So,
will help you, but you don't actually need to. You can win against max level adversaries by doing nothing more than looking at the known information that is already there and assessing it right and prioritizing and following the guide, you know.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Did I hope I'm not cutting you off here, but was there more on this, on like the turn evaluation process that we didn't get to, or do you think that we've hit it all here?
I think, yeah, I think that we've covered. I mean, your viewers will let us know, right?
Yeah, of course.
Uh, but yeah, no, I think that this is a. I think I've talked a lot. Is actually what I want to say.
Sure.
So
Well,
hopefully, if I haven't explained myself by now, it might well be that I'm just not going to be able to.
sure. So then, if we can, I have some examples from games I've played where I was thinking if we just do sort of a high level analysis, try and look at, do a quick identification of blockers, then threats, then problems, and then sort of come up with the plan, and not necessarily go into like the whole turn structure for each one, but at least sort of start this process for them.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first one is a game of Shadows versus Brandenburg Prussia 6.
Okay.
This is the first turn of the game, so every piece is a blocker in my
Cool.
mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is exactly the intention with the definition, and it is literally possible to look at this board state and go, are there blockers? Yes. That there is no feasible way to deal with all of them. Cool. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. So then we look at threats. I don't know how much you consider the first stage 3 card on Brandenburg Prussia a threat, but I guess I think of it as usually it's at least 2 blight per board, at least somewhat threatened. Most spirits can't handle 4 lands on the first 2 turns before they ravage, but they can usually
Yeah.
handle 2 to 3 of those lands.
Yeah. No, that is 100% what I would say. The Prussia's threat condition or loss condition, if you will, is running out of the invader deck or running out of blight because of the rapid pressure of the invader deck.
Sure, yeah. So
And
either
so
either
yeah,
you're
so
doing too much to compensate for their high tempo, and so you take too much blight and lose and blight out, or more likely you manage the blight, but you run out of time because they're just so fast.
Right. Like we were talking about England earlier and the way that England is the sort of, England teaches you the importance of scaling and like scaling up really big. And Prussia, I think, is there to teach you the exact opposite thing, which is this is why it's so important to scale to just the right amount.
Yeah.
Because if you try to play a super greedy game against Prussia where you just, scale and clear all of your tracks and whatever, the game is over already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so in this board state, and I would say this is actually nearly the best initial explore that you could have gotten.
I think you're right, actually, but because
Yeah.
this is from a game that I have on the channel. So if you've seen my Shadows versus BP6 game, uh, you basically can take out the starting city almost immediately by setting up a Favors Called Due Concealing Shadows combo. And
Right.
because of the two adjacent jungles, you can also abuse Mantle of Dread and your innate power to solve another land, or to solve both of the jungles while still pushing them into land 2 to get wiped out by your 4 Dahan.
Hmm. Yeah.
So this is
Yeah,
this is a
exactly.
this is a ridiculously good first explore.
Yeah, this is really this is wonderful. I love this for you.
Yeah.
Um
I won this game, so you know.
yeah. Yeah, and I
um
mean you've got to like pilot things appropriately, but boy, it makes your life so much easier when when you get something like this to work with. So, yeah, I mean, I would be inclined almost to say that everything here, I'm going to say two things that are going to contradict themselves. Everything here is a problem, and none of them are threats, but also land 2 is maybe a threat.
okay.
And the reason I say that is that cities tend to be sticky on the board. This is less true for Shadows because Shadows has crops wither to downgrade them, but cities tend to be harder to deal with, and so the uh, if you kind of imagine letting any of these four lands blight, they're all going to be explorer town lands that would blight, and that's relatively easy for Shadows to deal with. So the one land that would be a real concern, that would be a real problem for Shadows, is if you let the blight happen underneath the city and then it comes up again in the Ravage slot.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden now you're looking at tanking a cascade. It like this is the way that you lose to Prussia via blight, when really what's killing you is the speed of the invader.
Yeah.
So I mean, it sounds like the play that you made here was that kind of uh, bring all of the explorers to a party in land 2, bring the Dahan in there, use concealing shadows to not take any damage on the ravage, wipe it all out, and at the cost of one blight, you have uh, wiped out the city on that land and therefore probably prevented it
From ever really
from being a
being a
big
threat
problem, right?
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the cost of that is that, land 6 goes unchecked. If you don't draft a power turn 2 to try and do something about land 6, you take a blight there and you lose a Dahan because you can't save that
Hmm.
Dahan with favors if you're pulling them all into
Yeah.
land 2. But at the same time, getting so much control over lands 1, 2, and 4 is just phenomenal and absolutely worth it.
Right. And especially because now you're most of most of the coast is now clear. Most of the coast is only going to be sending in explorers from here on out. And as Shadows, I mean, you've got explorer control on lock, right? Like
Exactly.
that's all fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it sets you up like really nicely.
Yeah. So then I want to point to or jump us to a much later point in this same game.
Okay.
You can see the blight in land 2 and 6 because we definitely took blight in those lands. We're
Yep.
down at Dahan, and we're sitting now with 6 towns left on the board and 7 explorers. And I
Yeah.
believe I believe this is the turn that I won the game.
Okay. And let me see. Yeah. So we're in the. Um, this is. Oh dang! Mountains. That was a lucky. Mountains not coming up for you until late.
Yes, yes, it was.
Um,
This game actually probably
how
had a lot more good RNG than I realized. But yeah,
how actually I'm looking at this. Was there must have been a
well,
disease in Land 3 and in Land 7?
no, land 7 I use crops.
Yeah. Sorry,
Um,
I thought you said both.
or sorry.
I thought you said both. But yeah, because you had a mountain just build, right? But no cities came up, or I guess the one city came up and then you used crops, and so now it got downgraded to a town.
Exactly. So last turn I took out a blocker or an
Yeah.
sort of blocker of the city, but then this turn I for me the blocker here is not one of the pieces on the board, but like you sort of mentioned earlier, it's the fact that right now you can't see it very clearly in the app version, but we're 3 fear away from terror level 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's the and thank you for highlighting that for all of the folks like me who are primarily TTS players because
Well, it's
we're
not
not
actually
used to
even
it.
explicitly shown right now because I don't have the fear deck open. So, but I
Wait,
do.
but isn't but the thing that says one card and one of
That's
four fear, right?
that's one card has been earned right now.
Oh,
Yeah, so I've
okay.
I've
Well,
already got a fear
you
card pending. But
oh you can see
so
that I have. Okay, well I then actually completely misinterpreted that. I thought that meant one additional fear card on Terror 2, and
no,
then
no. But yes, we are regardless of that, we are still one fear card away from Terror 3.
great. Well, yeah. Well, I love being right for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, but I mean I think this is a good then illustration as well of what we were talking about kind of the like the one turn that you really need to drive at something
Yeah.
because we've got mountains ravaging, and that's fine, sort of. You know, it's Prussia. It'll only do one blight. Neither of those are going to cascade. But the fact that mountains are then going to build subsequent to that, and then of course that build is going to ravage again. Um, you know, your your land 7 is out of control,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I don't and I don't know what powers you have, but like if you can win before that gets the opportunity to fully uh just destroy you, you absolutely want to do it.
Yep.
Um,
Precisely.
so yeah, so I mean what I look at here is that you have there's a strife under the explorer in land 3, right?
Yeah, that came from I think a fear card the previous turn
Okay.
before the build, so it had to go on to something.
Yeah. So the first evaluation that I do here is I say, okay, we can probably play Concealing Shadows on land 3 and take out all of that stuff, and that's going to get us one fear on the Ravage, which means that if we can get two more fear in the fast phase, we will win before the Mountain Jungle build happens.
Which conveniently, concealing shadows gives one additional fear, just on the
Brilliant.
card
Okay, yeah.
itself.
So
And
now, yeah, so now we need one, right?
yep, which in this case I got by we have 3 card plays unlocked, and so we
Mhm.
can take shadows second level innate, destroy 2 explorers for 1 fear each. So
Brilliant.
we don't actually even need to get to the ravage. We can just win in the fast phase.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was then going to was that the sort of the one like the even one step beyond of it is looking at this ravage and saying you say okay great the ravage happens, we'll do the fear, we'll do this. The one step beyond is knowing that there are events that can cause a ravage to not happen because the strife is there.
Yep.
And so you kind of ask yourself, is there a way that I can win with even fewer component uh, circumstances that have to happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's better to earn the fear because it literally says fear on your card than it is to be relying on the fear to happen based on the board state, because who knows, like stuff can change it around.
I've absolutely lost games that I was going to win on the Ravage step because I got the wrong event,
Yeah,
and and
it's heartbreaking.
it's I mean sometimes it's very exciting, but yeah, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely better in my mind if you can win in the fast phase. Always win in the fast phase, even if you could win in the Ravage. Take a look and see if you can still do it in the fast instead, because
Yeah, yeah.
if there is another path that leads you to that, maybe you grab a different power than you would have grabbed otherwise, because suddenly you can win in the fast now if you grab that other power.
Right. And yeah, the less that you have to sort of rely on everything else to stay the same, the better it is. There's a saying in chess that when you see a good move, look for better.
Yeah,
And I think that that really applies here, right? That you
absolutely.
if you can identify a pathway to victory that is contingent on something happening, what you then want to do is try to identify a pathway to victory that isn't contingent on that you can 100% guarantee, because there's nothing in the game that, if you have fear being generated in the fast phase, there's nothing in the game that means that fear didn't get generated, you
Yep.
know. I actually realize as I'm saying that there's an event that sort of does, but if we win before we flip over the event, it doesn't matter. So
I guess yeah. That's where I'm thinking of. Win in the fast. Don't let the event card get to you.
yeah.
All right. So then, next game I had for us to take a look at is an Ocean versus England 6 game.
The classic.
Yep. This is solo Ocean, so here we are on turn 3, and we've already got 6 energy. I think this is turn 3. No, this isn't turn 3. Or actually, yes, it is turn 3.
Is that a stage 1 mountain? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a stage 1 mountain in the high immigration slot.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've really just started this.
This is very early in the game still. So just to give a little context leading up to this point, my usual Ocean strategy is growth 2, then growth 3, then growth 1. And we've just taken the reclaim from our growth 1, and we're about to gain our power card and figure out which presents we're going to pull back into the Ocean.
Solid. Okay.
Some interesting notes from this game in particular. We got Gift of Power early on, so we're a little more flush with powers than we would be otherwise.
Yeah. What a great card for you.
Yeah. Gift of Power is amazing on Ocean. We're also... I'm blanking on something because we somehow got one more power card, I think. Because how did I get... Well, I don't remember the exact sequencing for this, but regardless, if we if we jump back to the framework though, we're still at Terror level 1, so technically every piece is a blocker.
Yeah.
It is England, so it's probably safe to assume that we're not going to win at Terror level 1, and so I'm not super concerned about the explorers as blockers, other than what are they going to build and how is that going to mess things up for me down the road.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at this. There's your biggest sort of threat land, theoretically, is land 1, um, where you have 3 buildings. But 3 is kind of, 3 is a long way off from 7. Like, even that doesn't seem too particularly threatening to me.
Certainly with the wetland card in the Ravage slot and not sitting in one of the build slots, yeah.
Yeah, there's a real, there's a possibility if this next Explore flips over wetlands, that starts to look pretty dangerous.
Absolutely.
That becomes a problem. But we don't know that it will yet. So right now what we're looking at is that's going to do one. If we do nothing, it's going to do one blight, and it's going to have one additional build, because when we flip that stage 2 explore, will England escalate into that land,
Yep.
right? So that'll leave us with 4 buildings. So yeah, I would really look at this as primarily just a problem setup. There's nothing here that feels incredibly urgent to prioritize. There's nothing that looks to me like this is going to cause us to lose immediately. And so what I would be mostly interested in doing is trying to scale in the way that is particular to Ocean, which is that Ocean needs something to deal with its inland lands, with lands 7 and 8.
Yep. Especially land 8 right now, given that we've already got it on the build slot. Well, and actually, no, land 7's about to build from adjacency build. What am I saying?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
both 7 and 8.
Yeah. So you've got both of those, looking like potential problems coming into the future. And so my thought on this is that you're going to need cards that allow you to actually affect that inland. Right now, the only thing that you have with sufficient range is Promises of Protection up in the top left with the range
Yep.
2 from a sacred site.
Yeah.
And so whether it be a major or a minor, and I think that's kind of that's almost a separate conversation about what we should be doing as Ocean. But yeah, I look at this, I say, I don't see any blockers because we're not winning yet. I don't see any real threats. And so primarily what I see are problems and the opportunity to scale with a particular focus on how we need to get better so that we can eventually win this game.
Yeah. I think that encapsulates everything I was going to say about it. So, I did. This is actually turn 4, by the way. I remembered we did a weird growth pattern because of Gift of Power, and took an extra growth 3 on turn 3.
Oh yeah, so you probably
So that's how we got Cleansing Floods, and is I took an extra major.
And that's probably also why you have so much presence sitting on the short right now.
So this is a little bit of an abnormal board state for turn 4 with Ocean, but it is. I mean, it's still one that happened. So
yeah.
Then I've got another screenshot from later in the same game.
Okay.
You should be able to see.
You have done well for yourself. I can see from all these powers.
Yes, and there's 5 more in the discard. And we're sitting on 12 energy. So this is, plus there's a stage 2 card sitting on the explore slot. So, this has gone well. This game has been pretty productive. I don't remember what the thing we got to deal with some of the inland lands was, but we clearly got something because we're not seeing any cities in land 7 or 8.
Yeah, you must have, because land 8 also didn't blight at any point. So I feel like you must have drafted a defend card that you used in there.
Yeah.
And then it probably built from high immigration.
I feel like there might have been like a Promises of Protection into a canny defense on an event or something like that. Where I was planning to just take the blight and let the Dahan survive the ravage and fight back, and then they get the high immigration town, but it's just a town, and so it's not going to be a blocker if we're going to Terror 3.
Right, yeah. And or maybe that's I see land 7 has a strife on it, like similar situation.
Yeah.
But okay, but in terms of like the board state right now, so we're Terror 2.
Yep. And I believe we're 5 fear away from Terror 3 again.
I was going to say I'm hoping again that I'm getting the sense of this exercise that we're trying to spot here, uh, take out the cities and win.
Yeah, and I think in this case, what I believe what I believe ended up happening here is that we ended up needing a new power in order to do it,
Yeah, because
because we don't
as I'm
have.
looking around,
And I don't think that there might have been a fast ranged power in the discard, but I believe that what I ended up doing in this game is I had to go and take another major, which we're sitting at 12 energy. We can easily afford another major,
yeah,
and then took out everything from there while trying to. I think taking out the two cities in lands 1 and 6 plus the town in land 6 gets us enough fear to push to terror 3. And if they get the build in land 5, then we need to. What am I saying? If they get the build in land 5, then that's another 2 fear as well. If we take that out, plus 1 for the
right.
town. So we're definitely getting enough fear to progress to the next terror level here. So it's more of a question of how do we get enough damage to actually get rid of all the 3 cities that are concerns.
Yeah. Well, and something that I think is really nice here is you've gotten the probably the fear card that has the invaders uh, just like skip
Yeah,
doing stuff, right? Which is why
you delay 1 explore basically. So
yeah,
they'll draw 2 explore cards, but that's
right.
fine because we didn't draw one last turn.
And the advantage of that is that it's created this I talked about how the problems are like the steady drumbeat of invader actions, right? That is just kind of this like flat line.
Yeah,
Um, and this is an instance where it looks sort of it's got that steady drumbeat, and then the drumbeat drops down to nothing on the graph, only to shoot up really high the next turn,
yeah,
like an EKG, right? Like the heartbeat monitor things.
yeah, yeah,
And what that does for you in this case is it puts you in this situation where England's one of England's problems is that it keeps putting cities up everywhere because it keeps doing the adjacency builds and the high immigration builds. And right now, you're in this kind of funky spot where actually there aren't that many cities being built.
yeah. There's only
There's
1 city being built this turn,
there's
and
one that's going to come up in the sands, and then there's going to be the 2 in the wetlands that are going to ravage. And then if we don't win by the time both wetlands are building and both of our double explore cards are building, all of a sudden, I mean, you've got 12 energy, but I don't think even that's going to help you,
no,
right? Like
no, yeah.
you're going to
This
be in
this
trouble.
is this is a pivotal moment for the game where we can say we can try and close this out, and if we don't close it out, suddenly things are going to get much worse very quickly.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I've been kind of, looking at the cards that you have and trying to plan out how you would be able to win with them. And I don't see a way that you could do it purely with uh, what I see that exists right here. And so I think that you made absolutely the right call on identifying that this was one of those scenarios where the opportunity is there, but you don't have the tools required to seize it fully.
Yeah,
And in that instance, you say, well, let's push for the opportunity. Let's take a look at some tools and see if I can make something work with any of them.
yep, precisely. All right. So that's it for the ocean game. Next one I have up is Thunderspeaker versus Sweden 6. In case you can't tell, I've got one versus each of the 4 adversaries in the app. So
Yeah, makes
Thun-
sense.
Thunderspeaker versus Sweden 6. This is a relatively early point in the game. We've still got a stage 1 card in the Ravage slot, but we have a lot of the game under control at this point. But there are still some
I mean,
things going on.
you haven't taken any blight yet, so yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
I mean, I think Thunderspeaker into Sweden 6 is a very good matchup. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, so last turn we cleared out land 2 of around 8 health worth of stuff. I think a city, 2 towns, and an explorer by manifesting for 9 damage. And this turn, we're sitting here and we're still at terror level 1 because Thunderspeaker.
Yep.
But we've got a problem in land 6, but only in land 6. And we have still every piece is kind of a blocker, but the biggest ones in my mind are 4, 5, and 8, where we probably aren't going to go to terror level 3 for this game. We're going to probably try and win it at terror level 2, and so I really want to hit those buildings as efficiently as I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that Thunderspeaker, especially against Sweden, has the ability to just kind of win by board clearing.
Yeah.
I'm interested though, because it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you saw an opportunity in this spot to you only have one card in your hand, right?
I only have one card in my hand, yeah.
And it sounds to me like you're saying that in this spot you liked reclaiming and trying to go for sort of a powerful maneuver against all of these things that were still on the board.
Basically, I don't remember exactly what the next play I took at this point was, but I think that the idea was do the reclaim at this point, gain a minor, and then gain a major. Because I really wanted to be opportunistic with that possibility of getting a major that suddenly solves, land 6 very cleanly, or deals with land 4 and gets rid of that last city, so that I can then sort of rush clearing out the towns in 5 and 8, hopefully before the invader, with, like, for example, with Thunderspeaker's right and 8, before they're able to actually build up any more cities on the board anywhere.
Yeah. I'm interested because I'm going back and forth on this, and I'm thinking to myself that right now the jungle in land 6 strikes me very much like that is a problem, not a threat.
I agree. Yeah.
It will, if we let it blight, become a threat on the next turn, because it will build a city and it will have a blight under it, and that will be, really dangerous for us.
Yeah.
I feel like as Thunderspeaker, actually, is that 2? The 2 is the number of card plays you have, right?
Yeah, I've got 2 card plays and 3 cards in discard. So this is the start of turn 3, I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm actually almost tempted to say that in this situation we want to scale up harder, that we want to get ourselves to more card plays, and then we're going to use that to be able to act effectively next turn against that jungle when it has turned into we're going to let it be a problem on this turn, and we're going to strike it down when it becomes a threat.
Gotcha.
But we're not going to worry about striking it down before.
I actually like that. I mean, obviously we can't go do the counterfactual right now because I'm pretty sure I did not do that. But the idea of take growth 2 here, for example, and toss another presence in land 2 and another presence in land 7 or something like that. Play Voice of Thunder, push in 2 Dahan plus 2 presence into land 6, and then next turn just reclaim.
Yeah, exactly. And the next turn we'll have enough. And this is me sort of spitballing because I don't remember if from here Thunderspeaker can reclaim, or Thunderspeaker can grow to the point of being able to hit the building destroying innate as a fast power. I don't know if you'll have the 4 air for it.
We have the 1 air from our top track, so if we get to 3 card plays, yes. We can destroy a town at fast speed.
Yeah, then I would
We're not going to get to the city level, but
Okay. Yeah, I would be legitimately like that would be a serious consideration for me then is if I think I will have the ability to um like to address that problem and to act powerfully on that next turn. Um
yeah.
that does that I mean that it worries me that you say we won't be able to take out the city because I think then our unique defense probably isn't enough. So like that might be why that plan doesn't work. But
Um, there's probably still a way to make it work. I think it just becomes a little more dependent on what cards you get in the draft at that point. Because if you pick up a defend 4 power, then you're great. If you pick up something that can do some damage, or you do something crazy with using sudden ambush on the land, plus words of warning, you can take it out that way.
yeah,
So there are certainly ways that Thunderspeaker has a lot of tools that could be used to solve land 6 next turn rather than this turn. And I believe that my recollection of this game is that I went a different route.
yeah.
So
Well, and I think that's I'm going to sort of raise that as a less as this is how you should play Thunderspeaker because again, not actually a spirit that I play a
sure,
ton of.
sure, and I'm not trying
But
to say that there's one right
oh
answer here.
no, I just want to I just want to make sure that no one in the comments anybody who's listening to this is like, well, he's an idiot and Thunderspeaker like you can't do that with Thunderspeaker.
Yeah.
If that's true, then yeah, absolutely, you're right. Like I don't know, but
I
if
actually
they're
really like the idea of that line of play though. Like I would be really interested to see how that goes, and I might try and give it a try next time I'm doing a similar matchup.
yeah, when I think I want to say that I only like that idea if it's a situation where you have you have the tools in quote unquote in hand, which is to say like in hand and in discard,
Sure.
um, to to do something about it on that next turn. If I think if you're having to draft into the solution, that's a real problem because you've kind of uh, we have agreed the jungle right now is a problem. If we
Yes.
don't deal with it, it will become a threat. And
Absolutely.
I think it is bad play to take a problem and allow it to turn into a threat when you don't have the things to deal with it as a
Yeah.
threat.
But
Right?
I think that worst case scenario, we'd get up to 6 energy. We could play sudden ambush plus words of warning plus manifestation of power and glory, and we would be able to destroy the town, sudden ambush the explorers away, and then defend the land to take out the city with the Dahan, and then move the other Dahan from land to somewhere where they're more relevant and use manifestation there. So there's definitely a line that works. It can certainly be improved on a lot by certain drafts, but it is definitely saying we're going to take the blight now and let it become a threat and see if we can draft a really elegant solution to it next turn. And if we can't, then take the sort of inelegant solution, but in exchange have been able to scale a lot better.
Yeah. I think in my opinion, it comes down to if you have the tools to do it for sure, then you can allow this to happen and treat it just as a problem and scale. If you don't have the tools to do it for sure, then I think you need to, uh, then you deal with the problem that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I do have another screenshot from later in this same game, so we can take a look at a little bit of what happened.
All right.
And we did take a blight in that land, but the reason we took a blight in that land is I'm pretty sure I reclaimed and drafted Insatiable Hunger of the Swarm
Oh,
and solved land 6 that way.
yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite major in the app version. So I probably overdrafted a little bit, but here we are, and I think this is a game that's about 2 moves away from checkmate.
Yeah.
We're
Well, I
still at
see We're still in Terror One.
We're still in Terror 1. I think at this point we're either 2 or 6 sphere away from Terror 2 though.
Okay.
So we're getting closer, and there is 5 sphere worth of buildings on the board. So
Yeah, we've got some nice stuff to chomp here.
but
Let me see.
in
Wow, and we're still at 2 card plays.
yes, actually, because I took that reclaim, and then I believe I took an energy spike the next turn, and Thunderspeaker's got a 1/2/2 on its bottom track.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are, and that actually plays into, I believe, what I end up doing here, which is I do take time to scale, sort of, or scaling is the solution in this case, because Thunderspeaker is currently 2 spots away on its bottom track from hitting its Reclaim 1.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this seems that the 2 card plays just jumps out to me as if we had more than that, I would think to myself, there's probably a way to kind of hit everything right now, and I mean conceivably. I think if we had 4 card plays that we could have the counterattack kill the stuff in land 8, that we could like snipe the explorer in land 7 and make sure that it doesn't build, and then we could manifestation in land 4 and we could
Yep,
win the game.
absolutely.
But we don't
Um,
have that.
we
We don't have
don't.
that many card plays right now.
No,
We
we
can't
don't.
do all that stuff.
If we had a little more energy, we could, and we had the cards in hand, we could do it with 3 card plays. I think, because we could do manifestation in land 4, sudden ambush in land 7, and words of warning plus right innate in land 8 to clear out everything.
Yeah.
Now, depending on where they explored, that would potentially leave a lone explorer or something that we need to clear next turn, or hopefully we hit terror level 2, and we don't need to worry about that. But
Right. Well, I mean, you said we're either 2 or 6 sphere away from that, and we're getting 5 from the board. Right?
exactly, yeah. So
Well,
plus
and actually, I mean,
manifestation's got 1 on it, I think.
yeah, manifestation has
So
the
that's
1,
that's the
and
6 sphere we need right there.
lands 4 and 7 are both planning on building, and maybe one of those goes through. Yeah, I mean, there's the lone explorer probably stops mattering. But I mean, returning to your original point, yeah, I think the thing is that if land 8 is dealt with, and I see the strife under the city, so I think that situation is okay. Then yeah, I mean, I go back to 2 card plays is not enough. We need to get more scaled.
Yes.
That's, I mean, I
So this is a game where I
you
probably
gave
didn't.
away, right? You scaled in this position.
Yeah, in this position, I went to my reclaim 1 on my plays track, grabbed manifestation back, cleared land 4 with manifestation, cleared land 8 with innate plus words of warning, and then took out land 7 in the fast after reclaiming next turn with 3 card plays.
Yeah.
So it's certainly very doable to clear the board from here this state, but it is one where if I had done more scaling earlier, it would have been a lot easier to clear the board at this state.
I think we're
I'm saying
in a
that right.
position. Yeah, we're in a position right now where I mean, boy do I not want to sort of backseat drive a game that I didn't even watch all of.
That's fine, but yeah.
And therefore don't know what the decisions were. But yeah, I find myself looking at this and going, gosh, there is we feel underscaled for being able to take on things, and if we had played sort of more aggressive, weirdly, if we had played aggressively to scale, which is playing more passively, letting the problems happen and accepting that they're problems,
Yep.
then I think we would be in a better position to be able to hit all of these blockers right now, and not have to go through a whole nother phase before we're able to wipe everything.
Yeah. And I guess to really hammer that home, I've only placed 4 presents this game at this point. Thunderspeaker hasn't lost a presence yet. We've only taken 4 off of our tracks, 2 from the top, 2 from the bottom. And that is really not scaling very much. And
Yeah.
I think I made choices that like I can justify somewhat after the fact and say, you know, well, I did it because of this and this. But at the same time, if I could have, like that line we were talking about on the previous screenshot, if we'd done something differently there, you know, we'd have 6 presents off of the tracks instead of just 4. And, you know, that might have been a huge difference.
Yeah. I realize, because I talked about this, but I didn't maybe uh, expand on it quite as much as I wanted. But the idea of growth options as scaling and acting powerfully right now. I talked about how we can speak in generalities about um, growth options, that generally what they do is they let you add presence, which is to say take it off of your presence track. You can gain energy, you can gain cards, and you can reclaim your cards. And um, scaling is about getting presence out or getting new cards, right? Um, Having the ability to use more tools or getting more tools that uh, you will be able to use in the future. And there are the other two, reclaiming to get your cards back and doing energy spikes, are about acting powerfully on this turn, right? It's saying that, like, right now, I'm going to do the really strong thing. But
Yeah, yeah,
you know, and there are like these sort of mixed cases where like growth Thunder Speaker's growth 1 and growth 3 are both mixed bags in this way,
yep,
right?
yep,
You The reclaim is just allowing you to act powerfully because you get the cards back that you have, but it's also your only way to gain new cards. Your turn 3 or your growth 3 does let you put presence out on the board, but it also does this energy spike that you get right now. Um, so it's sort of kind of both. But yeah, I think that Thunder Speaker is a spirit that stands out to me in terms of its ability to allow you to get away with not scaling in the way that I think you kind of want to objectively.
yeah. So this may not have been the greatest example in terms of scaling, but I think that the point you're making is really good, though. Of
Yeah. It's a spirit that has a lot of ability to act powerfully in particular instances without necessarily having to scale yourself to that point of being able to consistently act powerfully. And I feel like what we're looking at is a game where you've checkmated Sweden through the careful application of acting powerfully on particular turns, um, and an instance where the alternative line was letting things go a little bit worse in the beginning in the service of swinging around and completely outclassing the adversary on the other end.
yeah. So So I think as you're saying that that's sort of an area where Thunder Speaker's a little idiosyncratic. They're just they're maybe not the best example for talking about scaling, but I think that there's definitely something to the idea of they're able to make that trade off and be very effective doing it. But be careful when you do it too much in your multiplayer games because your teammates might get very mad at you if you get into the late game and you have to play about 1 or 2 more turns than you thought you had to.
Right, yeah. And I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now that just my eyes are locked on that 2 card plays thing. I just keep going like, man, Thunder Speaker, like when are you gonna be able to do, full set of card plays and hit your full level innate and like do all of the
Oh,
stuff, you know?
I can barely I can tell you how very rarely I've hit 4 card plays and or the second level or the full leveled right innate with Thunderspeaker. It is not a common occurrence the way I play the spirit.
That's it. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. But yeah. I think with that, we should probably move on to the next one and the last one. So this is River Surges in Sunlight, base river, of course, because we don't have the aspects in the app version, against
Right.
France 6. And this first one is a fun little screenshot. So
Oh God.
there's a
Okay.
lot of towns.
Well, I mean, look, if I hope I've explained myself sufficiently clearly to be able to point out um, what is the threat here. Um, though actually, okay, so I'm gonna look at this a little more closely because the thing that immediately shows up is that is one, two, three, 4 towns in your land 2.
Absolutely.
Um, there's a 5th one in your land 5,
Yep.
and France has a town pool limit of 7.
Yep.
So we're butting up dangerously against that.
Did you count the 6th town in Land 7?
No, I didn't even.
We have 1 town left in the pool right now.
We have one town left.
And
Okay,
we're
yeah,
about to build 2 more in Land 3.
right. So this is a really good uh, instance of you need to look at the board and you need to understand what is what is actually a threat and what is actually a problem, because the the threat here is land 2, but it's not that land 2 is ravaging. The threat is that there are a bunch of towns that are sitting on there, which mean that our town bag is really small, which means that land 3 is actually our threat, because if land 3 does its thing, we die.
Yep. Precisely.
Right. So there's sort of a, and there's this, then like on an even more meta level, like land 7, I see 3 explorers in there, you know, that can conceivably, there's a disease right now.
I was going to say the disease
spot,
there
but
does a lot to counter the threat of Land 7 right now.
yeah,
But yeah.
but especially if that disease weren't there, I would be looking at that and thinking like longer term into the future, this could develop into a threat, right? It's not a threat right now because the card hasn't come up. But if that card does come up, that's real dangerous. But circling back to the point that we're really talking about, which is that land 3 is actually our threat. So like, for example, if we had the card Flash Floods in our hand right now, which is 2 damage on the coast, we could use that against land 2, and we could kill one of those towns. But killing one of those towns doesn't actually really do anything for us. The land is ravaging, the land is blighting anyway. Like that's just a thing that's going to happen right now, right?
Yeah.
Using it on land 3, however, means that we're not going to have town builds, which means that we're going to be delaying that big threat from France and not losing to the town count. So that's really, this is I would say an instance, and I think it's the decision is probably made pretty easy by the fact that it looks like we have no cards in our hand.
Yeah,
right
this
now.
is turn
Everything's
3
in our
of the
discard.
standard bottom track river opening, so we're going to reclaim here almost certainly.
Yeah, but
I
just
think we're a little wealthier than usual because of an event or something like that. We probably got a plus in energy for having 2 Dahan in our lands.
Yeah,
because I don't think River usually has 3 energy at this point. I think they usually have 2. I
you
might be
may
misremembering.
have. Are you able to? You might be able to. You're playing solo though, right? So
This
you
is
have,
solo, yes.
You can boon of vigor for yourself, and I think there's because you will have unlocked your reclaim 1.
Yep,
by this point.
reclaim 1 is unlocked.
So
We've got
there's
3 card plays.
I think there is a possibility that you can, if you play more of your zero costs in this spot that you can spike up to the higher energy right now. But in this is that's sort of irrelevant to the broader point, which is that this is kind of a clear example of one of the cases where we need a particular power. We need flash floods, um, and there is uh, there's a particular path uh, to getting that, which is um, reclaiming, getting our cards back, and being able to do stuff. So, I mean, as you said, like we're in a spot in the build where we probably were going to be reclaiming no matter what. But I think this is a valuable kind of test case for uh, the guide and the thought process that it tells you, yes, this is an instance where reclaiming makes a lot of sense because it's France, and therefore we have this very early threat already on the board.
Yeah. And there is something a little interesting about this board state too, in that if we do reclaim, we're not going to actually get any utility out of our innate power this turn, because we're about to lose both of our sacred sites to the Ravage unless we get a defend card for land 5. And that's getting away from talking about the threat evaluation system, but that's just an interesting consideration for me at this point in the game.
It does raise an interesting point because we're looking to probably draft a solution for land 5. I mean, land 2 is just
land 2 is screwed. Yeah, I don't think there's any power in the game that would immediately address the issues that land 2 has as a problem. But again, as you pointed out,
nature and get indomitable claim or something. But
yeah, that would do it, I suppose.
Nothing reasonable that's gonna happen here.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like the reclaim because it makes sure that we get stuff and we have a power card, possibility to draft for land 5. But you raise a point about getting the innate that a growth 3 here also gets us a power card and an opportunity to save the draft, and we get to scale, and we get to put down a presence. And this is all made possible by the fact that the Reclaim 1 has been unlocked. And so there are multiple lines that get us the single card we need, right?
Yeah.
Flash Floods is that single card that we're kind of grabbing and orienting our turnaround, and we're saying, well, this one has to be played because this deals with the threat that's on the board.
Yeah.
And I think it's an entirely viable idea to say we do that with the Reclaim 1, and then our other card could be a minor that we pull from Growth 3, or we can try to reclaim and go for doing things that way.
Yeah. If we really want to be greedy, we could even grab a major with our Growth 3, because we could potentially grow top track at this point and set up a 3 energy for that. But that's probably too risky for most games.
I think in a different context, I would like that a lot better. Yeah. I look at land 5 and I go, there's so many things that deal with this town.
Yeah.
Right here.
Absolutely.
And that make it not a problem. But yeah, I think the idea of hunting for a major tracks, and I don't like it in this case for kind of a very specific reason that it's not what we need to do as part of our maximizing of the secondary value.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I've got one more screenshot for us, unless there's anything more on this one you wanted to say, or
no. I think let's see how this progresses.
We clear out land 2 and get a couple of disease in there, in fact. but we do take a blight there. We do take a blight in land 5. Um, I believe what I did was I lost both the sacred sites and then moved on from there. But this is again turn right before winning,
Yeah.
and there's
Well, and this is like the clearest example of a blocker that anyone could ever give,
yeah.
right? We've got this Mountain Ravage is one lone explorer who's going to die to the Dawn. Uh, our build slot is effectively empty because there's nothing in either of those jungles, and there's no adjacency build. I mean, nothing's going to build up. So the only thing that's going to happen uh, when we flip that last stage 2 is we're going to explore somewhere, and we're going to toss out a bunch of explorers.
And we're going to
Um,
probably get an escalation effect that'll out of town.
right, yeah. Um, although you could, how
What?
much blight do you have? You have 4 blight
Yeah.
remaining. You could take the blight too.
Uh, not if they explore wetlands next. Because if they explore wetlands next, I don't have any buildings in the wetlands, so you don't get the choice.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So,
Fair.
but we can always put it on the coast in land 2, and then we can just reclaim flash floods and clear it the next turn. So like a
Mhm.
lone town there is not actually a big blocker. It's pretty easy to deal
Right.
with.
That town isn't really the issue. Our issue is that. So I'm looking down here at this fear and this terror thing. Are we 2 fear away from terror 2?
Yes, we are.
Aha. All right. I believe that I have
Hmm.
divined the secret of this quiz.
Yes.
Because do I also see 2 towns in land 7?
You also see 2 towns in land 7. Yes. What
Perfect.
what you don't see that I'm pretty sure is in here and also makes this almost trivially easy is I believe there's a copy of Sky Stretches to Shore sitting on our discard pile.
Oh, that's, yeah, the ultimate river card that you could get.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. So this one is actually like trivially easy to win almost at that point
yeah.
because we just Sky Stretches to Shore, hit our max level innate, clear land 7. We can wash away the Explorer from land 5 into land 7 if we want. Actually, no, we can't. Not if we Sky
No,
Stretches.
not with sky stretches. Yeah.
Not with Sky Stretches, but we can. But we still go down to 2 Explorers, Terror level 2, victory.
Right. Well, and this is, you mentioned earlier the concept of, try to win in the fast, right? We were talking
Yep.
about doing things that are not contingent. And so, what I was going to suggest here was, okay, well, great. Like, we have massive flooding. We can take out land 7. That's awesome. And Sky Stretches being there, even more awesome, because now we don't even have to go through an event phase. And, uh, as you say, if they explore into wetlands, then we might feel obliged to take a town and put that down, in which case that town now becomes a new blocker that's preventing us from winning. So now we would have to do something else, in the future to do it. If we have Sky Stretches and we've got the ability to hit our max level innate, let's do that right now. Let's take that out. That's going to get us 2 more fear. That's going to pop us up to terror 2. Only explorers on the board. Boom, we win. Game over. Checkmate.
Yep. I think that summarizes it nicely. I don't. There's not too much else to say about this board state. It's pretty close to resolved. So
Yeah, there's
yeah.
I'm just sort of imagining, in a chess game, when you have the last move that leads to checkmate, you don't spend all that much time analyzing that one.
No. In this
So
in this case, you look at it.
you do the checkmate.
You pretty quickly come to the right conclusion here.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah. I think that's everything that I had. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this. I love this framework. I think it helped improve my play a good deal when I first read it, and I think that I've happily suggested it to tons of new players because I think it really emphasizes some things about the game that aren't necessarily obvious, but when you think about them, really just show how important they are. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you feel it's been positive for you. I'm really happy every time I go back to this post and I see the number of upvotes on it slightly because, ooh, I get upvotes. But really, really, what that means is, as I'm looking at it right now, I see 125 upvotes on it, and that means that 124 different people looked at this thing and read at least some of it, and hopefully all of it, and were able to said, I got something out of this. Said that, effectively this made my Spirit Island experience better because now I understand the game a little bit better. And I think that understanding the game leads to having more fun with it because the more you feel like you have the ability to identify a play that you think is good and a play that you think is not going to be good for you, the more you get to start really playing around with like all of the combinations. We talked in that Sweden setup about the different lines that you could take.
Yeah.
And I think more important than any idea of like whether your line that you took in the game or the one that I suggested was quote unquote right, the thing that really matters is that we were both looking at the same piece of information. We were both identifying this is the thing. We have to do something about it. We have to have a plan for it. What is our plan going to be and how are we going to execute that plan? And it's entirely reasonable to differ on what that plan is, how you execute that plan. But you only are able to have that fun improvisational experience if you have this foundational framework of understanding that this is the land that matters and you need to do something about it and you need to care about it and you need to make choices in a way that actually address this. And so I think if people take nothing else away from the guide, that's really that's the key, is that getting this foundational level of understanding of how the game flows is what opens up all of the amazing and varied possibilities of different cool plays that you can make within the game.
Yeah. I think that summarizes it better than anything I could say. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate all of the work that you do for the community, putting out these videos that you do, finishing up your Spirit Guide series, and I hope that you'll be coming out with more exciting stuff like that.
I've got one or two crazy plans in the works, so we'll see how those turn out first, and then go from there. But yeah,
I'm very excited to see that. And if you'll let me, I'd just like to plug the Spirit Island subreddit, on which I post occasionally, and a lot of other people post as well. It's a nice home for the community. The Board Game Geek forums page, and the real thing that I want to plug is the Spirit Island Discord, where I hang out all the time. And so if you have questions for me or want to politely yell at me about dumb things that I have said somewhere, hop in there. I will be around and would love to see more people join so that we can all have fun playing Spirit Island together.
absolutely. I'll put links to all of those in the description, so you can find those below. And thanks so much for watching. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much for having me.